Awesome. Welcome, everyone. My name is Kim Havens. I'm the event manager here at An Unlikely Story. I'm so excited to welcome Andy Griffiths all the way from Australia to celebrate the release of the 10th book in the Treehouse series, the 130 Story Treehouse. We started hosting Andy way back in 2017. That seemed like a long time ago, with the 65 Story Treehouse. And when he and Jeff got together for that event, I laughed so hard my cheeks hurt. Before we start, I'd like to go over just a couple technical tips. If your picture is blurry, you can click on the help button and choose compatibility mode. You'll be on a slight delay and you can turn it off at any time. If you lose your connection or the sound or the video or anything, just go ahead and exit out of your browser and jump right back in and you should be all set. If you have any questions for Andy, you can enter them at any time in the Ask a Question box at the bottom of your screen, and we'll get to as many as we can as time allows towards the end of the talk. If you would like to purchase a copy of the 130 Story Treehouse that comes with this handy dandy, super cool signed bookplate all the way from Australia, signed by Andy, click on that green button and we will get a copy out to you. Andy Griffiths is the New York Times bestselling author of The Day My Butt Went Psycho, Zombie Butts from Uranus, and Butt Wars, The Final Conflict, I think he likes the word butt, as well as the Treehouse series and Killer Koalas from Outer Space. In 2007, he became the first Australian author to win 6 Children's Choice Awards in just 1 year for Just Shocking. He is passionate about inspiring a love of books in his young readers and works as an ambassador for the Indigenous Literacy Project, which provides books and literacy resources to remote Indigenous communities around Australia. Andy is a big fan of Dr. Seuss and of cauliflower. He lives in Melbourne, Australia, where you will see his very cool studio, and he is Australia's most popular children's author. Andy is going to talk about his new book, in which Andy and Terry live in a 130-story treehouse. It has a soap bubble blaster, a time-wasting level, a 13-story igloo, the Grabinator, which can grab anything from any time, a toilet paper factory, which I think we could all use one of, and an extraterrestrial observation center for observing aliens. As it turns out, though, it's Andy and Terry and Jill who are being observed and then abducted by a giant flying eyeball from outer space. So I think that gives you enough of an idea. So without further ado, let's get this event started with Andy Griffiths. Hello,
Thank you
Andy.
very much, Kim. Hi, Kim.
So good to see you.
Yeah, it's great to be back at Unlikely Story, even though it's virtual. There's no little segways riding around the shop, which is like better than anything I can make up. We've been Terry and I have been hard at work in lockdown, making up another 13 levels, which I'll tell you about tonight. But first, I just want to take you, answer the big question, why 13? And if I can just figure out how to share my screen here. Let's see if we can go straight in and play that. Okay, this is a color shot of our treehouse. And the reason it started with 13 is because I asked Terry, can you draw a tank full of man-eating sharks, a bowling alley, and also a marshmallow machine to fire marshmallows into our mouth whenever we're hungry. Just draw the world's coolest and most dangerous treehouse. And he started work and came up with this a couple of hours later. And I was like amazed. I didn't even know he could draw that well. And I counted the levels with difficulty because, as you know, I can't count very well. But I figured there was 13 levels. And I said, where's the rest of the stuff? And he said, just hang on a minute, haven't finished. And then he added all of this amazing detail, which was much more than I'd asked for, which is why I love working with Terry, because he gives me what I want, but not in the way I expected. Then he coloured it all in, and I realised we had an amazing treehouse that I wanted to live in, and I suspected many of our readers would want to live in as well. So we started writing, about a book where we couldn't figure out what to write about because we were so distracted by all the stuff in the treehouse. That was really well received by the kids in Australia, and they started demanding another one. And we said, great, let's add another 13 levels. Let's double it. And then we ended up with our 26-story treehouse, retaining all of the previous levels and adding another 13. Then after that, I said to Terry, let's double it again. Let's do 52. And he said, no, hold on. That's too much drawing. So I said, all right, we'll add another 13. So that became the law and the rule for expanding the treehouse. And it's been going on for some years since then. The 130 is the 10th book in the series. We went through 52, 65, 78, 91, 104, 117, where we battled with the story police. And then we arrived at the 130. Now, before I can show you any of those levels, well, I can show you the levels, but before we can explore them, we just need a word from Inspector Bubble Wrap, who is the treehouse safety inspector, and he's a little worried. It's a very dangerous place, and we just have to go through this safety briefing before we can carry on, and he's done it in a list of do's and don'ts. So just bear with me for a moment. I don't want anyone to get hurt. Do swim in the see-through swimming pool. Be careful not to stand on anyone's head, especially if it's me. Don't swim in the shark tank. That's Terry demonstrating what not to do. In fact, if you read the books, whenever Terry's doing anything, it's usually what you should not be doing. Do swing on the swings. Don't swing on a snake. A lot of snakes in the treehouse. Do drink lemonade, or as you would call it over there, soft drink, I think. I can't. No, I forget what you call lemonade. Anyway, the fizzy stuff with sugar in it. Do drink lemonade in the lemonade fountain. Don't drink too much. Do go bowling. Don't mistake your friend's head for a bowling ball. Do bounce on the trampoline. Don't bounce so high you get in the way of planes. They get very cross, even though it is, I admit, a lot of fun. Do juggle chainsaws responsibly on the chainsaw juggling level. Don't get distracted while juggling, and I speak from personal experience. Do eat your vegetables. Don't let your vegetables eat you. We had a lot of problems in the 52-story treehouse with this. Do make sea monkeys. A lot of good fun. Don't make monkey monkeys. That's a rookie error. Do be nice to your friends. Don't push your friend's head into the sun, even if you think they stole all your crisps, because you might be wrong. Do wash your underpants. Don't wash them in the shark tank, or the sharks will eat them and get very sick, and then you'll have to call Jill and have to dive into the tank and do open shark surgery on them. So just, be sensible about this. Do not go into the maze of doom. No one who's ever gone in has ever come out again. Don't go into the maze of doom. How many times do I have to say it? Do get your book in on time to Mr. Big Nose, or he tends to get so mad that his nose explodes. So don't be late. All right, safety briefing over. I can show you a couple of key new levels from the new book, which is a soap bubble blaster. This will just fill whatever area you want with millions of soap bubbles. Careful you don't get them in your eye though, because they hurt. The Grabinator. The Grabinator is a grabbing machine so powerful it can grab anything from anywhere, anytime, and it can even pick up itself. We have a toilet paper factory because, as we, and I suspect you learned last year, you can never have too much toilet paper, and there is all sorts for all types of bottoms. We have possibly my favorite level of the whole treehouse, super long legs level, where you go in, your legs will become super long and you can stride across the countryside very, very quickly. And we have the Extraterrestrial Observation Center. And as you can see, the skies down here, down south in the southern hemisphere, are just full of stuff. And we love looking for extraterrestrials every night. We never go to bed, of course, because there's no rules in the treehouse and no adults. One time, and that's what the book's about, we saw a UFE, but even worse, it saw us. And that's the UFE that we saw, an unidentified flying eyeball. And worse, it was beaming down a ray of light and encased us in a dome and then took us on a wild, crazy ride through the solar system. Me, Jill, Terry, the tree, and took us back to its home planet, Eyeballia. Now, we were a little bit worried at this point, but because when we landed on Eyeballia, we were surrounded by thousands and thousands of eyeballs. But at first, we thought we were specimens in an intergalactic zoo because there were all these other aliens in domes as well. But as things tend to go in the treehouse, it was much worse than we imagined. The eyeballs had brought us there for an intergalactic death battle, us versus 12 aliens fighting to the death. And boy, that was really something. I'm amazed we even survived. In fact, I don't even know if we did survive. But to find out, you will have to read the book because this is just the beginning. All right. So now I'm going to introduce a very special guest to the treehouse. And if I can get out of my presentation there. And have I done that?
You have done that.
So. And there is our special guest.
Yeah. Hey, everyone. I'm Jeff Kinney, and I'm the owner of An Unlikely Story. And Andy is my friend. I'm very proud to be able to say that. Andy, how are you? How have you been?
Really well. There's been fewer distractions around the treehouse than usual, thanks to the long lockdowns last year. So.
Yeah, I realized you might be the author. I think you are the record-holding author for visits to An Unlikely Story, and you live in Australia. And you would definitely be the record holder, if not for a snowstorm. Can you tell everybody what happened once?
Now we were going to do an event, I think it was two years ago, maybe 3. Yeah, I got there, set up in that beautiful boardroom you have in your bookstore is the closest thing I've ever seen to the treehouse in real life. Like, it's only 3 stories, but bookstore and cafe at the bottom, theatre and event space in the middle level, and up top you have that beautiful office with the glass walls, so people can stand there and watch your work. I don't know how you stand that. I mean, I don't know how you feel about your readers, but I hate my readers. I don't want them anywhere near me.
Oh boy.
Let alone watching me sit there writing. That was a joke, by the way. I don't hate readers. That's Terry. He's the one who does it.
And so given COVID...
Well, I was all set up to do an event, and then the skies got dark and the weather reports got ominous, and you came in and said, "You've got to get out of here." And I said, "But I just got here."
From
no,
Australia.
go. And we had a crazy 3 or 4 hour ride down to New York through the night, through the storm. And,
you escaped.
Yeah.
You escaped.
It's always fun to visit your store, Jeff.
Thank you very much. And so you're a touring author. You tour more than I do, and I travel a lot. I was wondering, what's it like now not being able to tour? Has it had any kind of effect on you, or have you learned a lot about yourself? What's it been like?
I've learned that it's actually quite nice not to be always packing up and always unpacking and having jet lag for many weeks after visiting the US. But Yeah, look, it's been a good rest, really, and a good chance to really go deep into the treehouse and figure out where we've been and where we haven't been, because we want each book to be new and different and not doing the same tricks as we've already done. So it was a very timely intervention for the treehouse.
Yeah, and I wanted to tell all of your readers and our viewers here that you last year really helped me write a book. I had to write a book in about 2 weeks. It was called Raleigh Jefferson's Awesome Friendly Adventure. And I called Andy and we FaceTimed, and he helped talk me through some stuff. And Andy, you gave me permission to be really, really silly. Yeah, so thank you for that.
I tend to have that effect on people, and I have it on Terry enormously, and Terry has the same effect on me. But look, I loved what you did with that book.
Well, thank you.
If you had called me earlier, I would have said, don't try to write a book in 2 weeks. That is madness of the craziest type. I take 12 months to write a Treehouse book because there's so many possibilities, and I hate the pressure of having to make choices really with not enough time.
It wasn't fun.
I'm really impressed with the adventure, and I loved spooky stories too.
Thank you.
Especially because I grew up reading horror comics. Like I loved regular books, but I also had this secret world of American horror comics, and I might have one here. This is a collection of the old comics I used to like, but you see the prominent eyeball there, and just lurid, awful stuff happening all the way through there. There's a nice
better be careful.
Vampires, werewolves, the same sort of territory that you've covered. There's some beautiful covers. So these fired my imagination as much as proper books, and so spooky brings those together for me.
Very cool. Very cool. I was thinking today, I had a question for you. It's, we've been through a year of lockdown now, and it would be really interesting if we went through an anti-lockdown. Is that nobody's allowed to be at their, nobody's allowed to be in their home.
But by themselves.
Yeah, well, but wouldn't that be interesting if everybody, the new rule was, instead of being in your home all the time, you can't go out. Now you basically have to stay out and you can't go in. So where would you go? If you had a year of anti-lockdown, where do you think you'd go?
Well, I've spent at least the last 10 years touring the world with the Treehouse, and that has been just an absolute blast. But I find every time I go out, I need the equivalent time to recharge internally and in my house. So to be out all the time would be a nightmare beyond anything I could imagine, because I love being out, but I also love time alone, and time, in that imaginative world that books feed. That's like a second life I have running alongside my main life, and I can always go there. So
gotcha.
I think if you found I was out of the house for a year, I would be out, but you'd be looking at me and I'd be very vague, and I would be somewhere else.
Yeah, I understand. I loved your new book. I read it today. In fact, I was up last night at midnight or 11:47, and I couldn't download it yet. And of course, now I have the hard copy right here. But I couldn't download it, so I downloaded it this morning. I really loved it. It's more imaginative than ever, which I realized when I wrote that it sounds a lot like a book blurb. So can you explain to our readers what a book blurb actually is?
Do you mean a book blurb where an author says something nice about someone else's book?
That's right.
Which I think you've done that for the Treehouse, haven't you?
Yes, I have. Yes, I have.
It is. It's. I guess it's more imaginative. It certainly leaves the Treehouse and the Earth and explores that whole outer space realm, which was another great passion alongside the horror comics. was I never liked Star Trek, but I loved Lost in Space.
Gotcha.
The family that went traveling around the universe,
Yeah.
meeting monsters and dealing with situations. So I think some of my TV watching is coming into this book as well.
Yeah. Is this the first book that you've done that was pretty straightforward science fiction?
It depends whether you count zombie bums from Uranus or zombie butts, because the butt books are long. Terry didn't illustrate those. They're many thousands of words, but they are long, silly, loopy plots.
Yeah.
And when we went to do the Treehouse, I wanted to keep that kind of idiotic story going. Like you don't. It's just so stupid. You've got to keep reading to see if it gets even more stupid. So the Treehouse borrows the plots of those, and there was a lot of outer space action in the butt books.
Gotcha. But that's something that's really fun about your books, and it's something I envy about you, is that your imagination is so pliable. Like your mind is so young. So how do you keep yourself in that mindset? What you wrote is almost like it springs from the imagination of a child in a way. So how is it that you can keep it in that world while you're an adult?
The window never shut. For me and Terry and Jill, we were all kids, obviously, once. But as we grew up, we didn't become grown-ups and forget about being children. The child was still there looking out of our eyes.
Yeah.
And it's not that we're just children all the time, but that child is always going, what if this, what if that? And look at that, that's amazing. So as you can see in my studio, there's a lot of toys, a lot of strange things. We get a little tour. Oh, there's Terry over in the background there. He's been working very hard, hasn't been eating well. But little tricks, and there's a little model of the treehouse there. And you'll notice there's two other crucial things. Books feed that imagination, and they're like fuel for it. But also music. Music I've never stopped loving. And when I listen to music, I get a certain excitement and feel the energy. And then I can't play music, but I can write. So I try to channel the energy from the music that I'm feeling. And that might be grunge, something like Nirvana. I want like Smells Like Teen Spirit, that excitement. I want that to be channeled into the books.
That's really cool. So those aren't tiny plastic books in the background. There's something else. You're saying those are music?
They're all CDs. I have many.
Explain to us what that is.
little shiny things that you put into a CD player, and they make noise. That's one of my passions, has been on tour. I'll find the nearest bookshop to the hotel and the nearest record shop, and I will just collect stuff as I travel, and then I bring it all back to Australia, and then just wall myself in here and put it all into my head, and that feeds the child inside me, to answer your question.
And so when you write a book, do you start with an outline? Is it really formal, or do you just like start at a starting place and then let it rip and go forward?
A bit of both. Usually it starts with an idea. So with 130, I just said, wouldn't it be funny if Andy, Terry, Jill, and the tree were abducted by a space alien and taken into space? So I just started with the image of the tree flying through space. And I thought, that's taking what we've done to another level of unlikely silliness. So that's where I started, and then I started asking questions. If they're going to be abducted, by what? And there was an old science fiction book called The Flying Eyeballs, which I loved. So that suggested eyeballs. And then I looked around my studio, and I've got lots of toys, many of them featuring eyeballs. This is really cool. If you do the lever on his back, his eyeball pops off. Essential writing tool. I have a little collection of eyeballs here. I've got big eyeballs.
Oh my goodness.
So as I'm writing, I'm just thinking about eyeballs, and then I'll get a little outline that I can pitch to Jill, and it'll just be me telling her they get abducted by a giant eyeball, taken back to Eyeballia. They think they're in a zoo, but no, they're in an intergalactic death battle. But they can't fight anyone because Jill loves animals, even deadly aliens. So here's my big problem. How do I get out of this? And I had the soap bubble factory idea. I thought, how would you fight thousands of eyeballs? You release the soap bubbles and sting them so that you can get away from the planet. And so it's a series of problems. And at a certain point, I'll write it down. Begins in an exercise book.
Yeah.
So I'll write pretty fast. There's some of my
Oh, wow.
illustrations. Now you can see why I need Terry so badly. Because what I envy you is that you can write and draw. That is a very rare combination.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so it develops out of that book and then to the computer, and would take me 3 months to do a detailed outline of the book.
Yeah.
And each pass gets more and more detail until suddenly you're holding a rough copy of the book. Then it goes to Terry. He draws lots of pictures. Some of them are terrible, and some of them are better than what I could have imagined. So I'll change the text to fit his drawings.
Do you ever try to, I'm sure you and Terry fight sometimes. You must get on each other's nerves a little. Do you ever come up with a drawing that's meant to antagonize Terry? Like where you say, like, you need to draw 1 million worms or something like that. Have you ever done that where you just want to poke at him and see what he comes up with? I
did in, I think it was, 90, I can't remember which one now, 91, no, 104. We had a never-ending staircase. And I thought, well, how do you draw a never-ending staircase? It's because by definition, it never ends.
Right.
And so I think I allowed 27 pages. I said, Terry, they need to climb the staircase, and I'm going to leave you 27 blank pages. And because I know you can do it. I know you'll have them going like an Escher staircase. They'll be climbing upside down, and they're saying something all the time. So I set him challenges, not to annoy him intentionally. But I think he was, we've never fought as such. We get along very well, and we've worked together for 25 years now. Yeah. But I do think he got a bit impatient with me with the eyeballs and the blobs on Blobdrometer in this book. Because this book had a lot of action, more action than usual. Yeah. And I was like, my inner 8-year-old knew what those eyeballs were supposed to look like. Yeah. And Terry was, they're not scary enough, or they were too scary. And so I think I tested his patience a little on that.
I love the intergalactic battle. That was just such a great, I think that's some of his best work. So you wrung the talent out of him with the you got every drip of water out of that sponge, as it were.
We work very differently, because I'll plan things out logically. Okay, if this happens, then this has to happen, and then this and that. So me and Jill love structure, and we love knowing how A leads to B to C to D. Terry's absolutely the opposite. He just draws without thinking. And he can't even tell me why he draws things, So why did you draw a cow floating around, with a beach ball? Oh, I don't know. I just like cows. And so that tension is how we get the books, and why it's such fun to work together.
That's so cool. And Kim, what we're going to do is, we know that we have 15 minutes left. So here's what we're going to do. First, Kim, I'm going to go ahead and look at some of the questions.
Okay.
And
you
how
can
about
the invite user on screen?
What's that?
We can invite the user on the screen right from the Ask a Question box.
You know what? Let's start with the questions that have already been logged. And actually, Kim, why don't you ask Andy a few questions? And Andy, this is going to be a rapid fire exercise because we also want to pull a few kids on screen too at the end.
Okay.
So Kim, let's go.
Okay, so from Callista, if you could make one level of the Treehouse real, which one would it be?
Oh, that's easy. I think it would be Andy Land, the level where all the Andy clones are, because they all do exactly what I tell them.
All right.
That is awesome. This is a funny question. So was there a person that inspired the character of Jill?
Well, as a matter of fact, it was Jill, who I met as the first editor on my very first book back in 1997, Just Joking. And we worked together so well. She added jokes. She stopped me waffling, and we got married and have worked together ever since.
You know what? I have to interject there because it's pretty hilarious. Jill is a character in the story, and you're all friends, and yet in this story, you have one roll of toilet paper that says Andy and Jill, with no explanation that you're actually husband and wife in real life. But you guys must be really close friends to have your own separate toilet paper from Terry.
Yeah.
All right.
I didn't even realize that. I've got to go back and look at those drawings more closely.
Kim, go for it.
Okay. Why do you choose these wacky levels that always seem to help perfectly with the plot? Is it planned or no? That's from PJ.
That's a great question. It's a bit of both. I'll have half a dozen ideas that are just silly ideas. And then as I'm doing the plot where I have to fight thousands of eyeballs, I'll think soap bubble machine we should have as a level. And then I can use that to fight the eyeballs. And I always feel a bit bad when I don't. In the beginning, we hardly used any of the levels in the plots. These days, I take pride in using almost every level at some point in the book. That's an innovation. But a lot of it is random, and we are going to release a second book next year with stories about some of the levels that we haven't ever used. So we'll get there eventually.
Yeah. All right. This question from Bree: who inspired Mr. Big Nose?
It was not my publisher in real life, and I have some lovely publishers in all of the countries, and they all have nice tempers, and we don't yell, and they've all got regular size noses. Mr. Big Nose was inspired by the Big Bad Wolf in the story of the Three Little Pigs and the Big Bad Wolf. It just adds an extra element of excitement. It would be a very boring story, the Three Little Pigs, if there was no wolf blowing their house down. And so he's there to add an extra bit of pressure on Andy and Terry.
All right, Kim, I think we can do 2 or 3 more.
Okay. So Rich would like to know, what is it that gave you the idea for the treehouse? Also, what gives you the inspiration for each of the new stories that you add?
Big question.
Big questions. The treehouse, we were actually working on another book. We had a little series of books here in Australia called The Bad Book and The Very Bad Book, which became Killer Koalas from Outer Space in the US. And we were trying to write the third very bad book, and we'd run out of ideas to be bad. All Terry had was one picture of his finger. And I said, that's it. We haven't got a book here. We'll have to write a really bad book about how we can't write the book. And so it was after that I said, we'll be in it, and we'll just waste the reader's time for an entire book telling them why we can't get the book written, and that will be the book. And you and me will be in it, and we'll live in a treehouse, a really bad treehouse with a bowling alley where the bowling balls will fall out and kill people when they hit them on the head. And people will fall into the shark tank and be eaten alive. And so it all came from this bad thing. But as you saw, he drew such a great treehouse. I said, yeah, let's forget the bad idea. Let's just make the story about a fantasy treehouse, because this is our life. We get to meet on a regular basis, sit there and just play imaginative games, play with words, play with pictures, play with ideas, as if we were 8 years old in my cousin's treehouse, where I used to do exactly the same thing.
That's really cool. So Kim, how about if we do this? We have 10 minutes left. So let's try to pull in a kid. So all the kids who are watching right now, there are 115 people logged on, which means there are about 200 people watching. And then on Facebook Live, there's another about 800 people watching. So there are a lot of people watching right now. But so keep an eye on the invite. If you get an invite, you have to click like accept twice. And sometimes people get a little nervous and they accidentally click reject.
Keep an eye.
Yeah. So why don't we, Kim, why don't you, if you want to be invited in and ask Andy a question, then raise your hand or write an X on the right-hand side or something like that.
Leave something in the comment section.
Or leave something in the comments.
Leave in the comments, and I can ask you from the comment section.
And we will see you, and you will be asked in. Okay, Krista would love.
So Krista actually has a good question that I was going to ask. Oops, there she goes. Okay.
Why don't you let Krista ask it herself? That'd be cool.
Okay, that's what I'm going to do. She was next.
All right.
So I'm going to invite her from the questions because everybody is asking.
Oh,
okay.
Look at that.
So Krista, you have been invited. So you just say yes. You want to let Crowdcast have your screen. Just a bunch. Oh yeah, now they're putting a whole bunch of X's, Jeff. All right. Okay. There's
Krista, hi.
Oh, there she is.
I'm on my mom's computer.
Oh, she's not Krista. Okay. Hi.
Hello.
And what's your question? Do you have a question for Andy, or did you just want to get on the screen?
Oh no, you're frozen.
Oh,
She's coming back to life.
Yeah, she's back.
And what's your question?
My question was, how did you meet Terry?
Do you want the true version or the not very true version? And I should say the not very true version is much more entertaining. But you want the true one?
Yeah, I'll have the true one.
Well, a publisher put us together very, very early on. I'd taken them a book and they said, we know the best illustrator for this. He's got a very good sense of humor and we think you'll get along very well. And that was back in 1991 and that publisher was absolutely right. But the not very true version is all in the 26-story treehouse. How we ran away from home and his own inflatable underpants, and I rescued him, and we got kidnapped by pirates. But I prefer the not true version any day.
Great question. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Awesome.
Thanks
So
for
I
reading.
invited Bree, so hopefully Bree will be accepting and connecting. All right, thank you.
Close video. What do I click?
All right,
See ya.
there we go. So Bree has been invited. Let's see, there she is.
Wow.
Maybe you
I'm actually recording. My name is Asa. I'm just on my mom's computer.
Hey, Asa.
Yeah, so my question is, why the heck did you write a book called The Day My Butt Went Psycho?
I've asked myself that many times, but it was, I think, what happened? I was making a list of all the silliest titles for a book I could think of in the world, and I made a list of about 30 different titles, but that was the silliest. And I used to joke to people that would be the title of the next book I would write. I'd say, the kids would say, you're going to write another book? And I'd say, yes, but it's going to be a serious book. And they'd go, oh, I'd say, it's called The Day My Butt Went Psycho. And they'd laugh. And I'd say, there's nothing funny about a butt that jumps off your body and runs away. So after a while, it became a joke. For so many years, I thought I'd better actually write this book. And so it's an extended practical joke that was written as much to entertain kids as to annoy adults who were trying to make sense of it. And of course, it makes no sense.
All right. What
All
about
right.
Good question.
I see Christian is trying to get in. Do you?
Yep, I invited PJ. So
Oh,
PJ,
Here we go.
PJ is accepting and connecting. Are
What's
you
up,
actually PJ?
Yes, my real name's
Hey,
Peter.
PJ.
Hi, Jeff.
Peter.
Hi, Andy. My question was, so let me just find it. Andy, have you ever referenced any of the characters from your other books, such as Killer Koalas from Outer Space, The Day My Butt Went Psycho, in your Treehouse books, like them walking around on one of the levels or interacting with another character?
That is a really good question. And no, I haven't, because we keep the treehouse as a butt-free zone. But in the very first draft of the treehouse book, there was a killer koala invasion. And by chapter 3, all the killer koalas had come down from outer space and destroyed the treehouse. And then they had to contact an uninventor to uninvent killer koalas. And then the story police came and arrested them all for such a silly story. So you'll know, if you've read the books, all of those elements are in all of the books. It was all too much. And me and Jill read the first draft and said, we've just destroyed the world's greatest treehouse in the first couple of chapters. That was a waste. So we took the killer koalas out. I think the killer koalas have now been replaced by giant flying eyeballs. So, yeah, good question.
Definitely.
Thanks,
Thank
Peter.
you.
And now we have Christian. Hey, Christian.
Yay.
I was wondering if the treehouse is real, what would you do? Like, what type of things would you do?
I would probably do exactly what we've done in the books, which is I would always be writing a book, because I do that just for my own personal pleasure. But I'd probably be riding that roller coaster, the roller coaster that's so scary that even dead people are too scared to go on it. I'd be on that all day long.
That's great.
What would you do? What would you do in the treehouse? Have you got a favorite level?
Oh my gosh, there's so many. I can't even remember. That one that would make books. Wasn't there one that would just create books?
Oh yeah, the the bookmaking machine, the writing and drawing machine that can write and draw a book without
I'll just make it just infinite. I'll just take a marker out and write 1 million.
Yep, perfect. Hey,
Awesome.
I've got to warn you, you've got a vampire bat on over your shoulder there. You should get a tennis racket and get rid of that.
And
Awesome.
can we get Henry in? I know we're getting close to the end here.
Yep. I do not. Where is Henry?
Somewhere.
There he is. Yep. Okay. Be quick, Henry. I've just sent you the invite. And accepting and connecting.
Great. That's good news.
Awesome.
This is a
There
great
he is.
entrance.
Henry, outside.
Henry's outside.
He's spinning around.
We can't hear you though.
Can't
I have
hear.
a question.
Yeah. What's your question?
So I have autism. How can I publish a book about a graphic novel about my autism?
Wow, that's a good question.
So
Let me answer. Listen. I think this is one we need Jeff's advice on as well.
Yeah.
In my to begin my
question
writing,
for Jeff Kinney.
I self-published. I just made the books myself and photocopied them and gave them to my friends or sold them to people who wanted them. So just making a book by yourself is a good place to start. Jeff?
And Henry, that's a great question. I think it's really important that everybody gets to tell their story. I've gotten to tell my story. Andy's gotten to tell his. We'd love to read your story. So if you think about writing a story about your experiences, what it's like to grow up as you, I guarantee you we'd read it for sure. So please really think about that. And it starts with doing the work, right? You have to put in the work, and then hopefully you can find a publisher who's willing to tell your story to other people. So thanks a lot, Henry. All right,
Thanks,
and we're
Henry.
going to.
Thank you, Henry.
Thank
Good
you.
luck.
Sorry, Henry.
sorry we had to cut you off, Henrik, because we have another event. Andy, I know.
We do.
That's like cheating on you, which is not fair.
Not at all. Not at all.
But you have so many fans, and they're so knowledgeable about the Treehouse series. And I just want to say, Andy, my favorite of your books is the one where Annie and Jack go back to Camelot. So that was a Magic Treehouse joke. Never mind, it didn't work. So
It wasn't. So everyone, just
Camelot.
you.
Like, who would want to go to Camelot? Like, that's crazy.
Yes.
Look at this book. It's gorgeous.
Look at this, super cool. Andy signed all these bookmarks.
Yeah, and you'll
Sent
see
them all
right
to
below.
Australia.
There's you can click on the link. You won't even leave this page. You'll get a book with Andy's signature all the way from Australia. Andy has one more thing to say before we sign off.
Oh, I'm going to let the magic eyeball say something.
Excellent.
I picked this up on one of my trips. Oh, hang on. So, can you see the eyeball?
Sort of, yeah.
Anyway,
Yes.
Here we go. Here we go.
Well, Sauron has spoken. So, Andy, thank you so much. This was a blast for us. It was a blast for everybody who wrote X's on the right-hand side as well. I'm sorry we couldn't pull more people in, but we would definitely have Andy back. And usually authors really keep their title of their next book close to the vest, but Andy has already released the title of his next book, and it is, go ahead, Andy.
The 143 story treehouse. And this time we're not going into outer space. We're going to have a camping holiday on the camping level. What could possibly go wrong?
Andy, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Take care.
Great to see you all. Thanks a lot, Jeff, Kim,
Bye-bye.
and all the
Bye.
readers. Bye.